The reality of life is that nobody wishes to inform you before it's too late. It's a lesson gained via adversity. Through observing others and betraying them, dismantle the very thing you once trusted. Your dignity's foundation, and here it is as you age, regardless of how free, regardless of how sentimental you are, certain doors should never be opened. Now, why is it happening? It's because the reason the past has claws is that human nature is terribly problematic due to the fact that conditions might reverse years of your hard work and dignity in a moment, and thus I would like to discuss with you now. There are 4 types of individuals whose houses you must stay away from if you want to maintain your tranquility, your moral character, and your future. One of the most profound forms of betrayal is intact. A person may sustain wounds, yet they aren't simply about a breach in trust. It's about finding out that someone you used to hold intimate partner with, whom you may have shared your hopes, anxieties, and weaknesses, that have took the deliberate decision to turn against. That decision you made is not a coincidence, is purposeful, premeditated, and frequently permanent. And now comes the challenging. When someone betrays you, they are being honest, demonstrating your precise position in their value system, evaluated the possibilities, took into account the repercussions, and nevertheless determined that whatever they benefited from their treachery, whether it was social standing or not, monetary benefit, strength, or even just temporary, your contentment was more valuable than your have faith in your partnership and your well-being, which is not an error. Enlightening, but many individuals, as they become older and are tempted to go back in time to establish a connection with those who hurt them, with the idea that time has cured every wound they believed themselves, that things might have altered, that the moment of betrayal of weakness, as opposed to a representation of genuine personality. Yet this is where individuals frequently make a serious assumption. Alters motives at that moment don't. Time only shows whether a person has once betrayed you. It indicates that at the most basic level, they were prepared to ignore you when it was most important, and disregard like that is not something that disappears as the years go by. The instant you return to the house of a person who has deceived you is delivering an implicit message to them that their treatment of you had no long-term effects. Repercussion that in spite of their readiness to cause you harm, you are still ready to go back into their world. And what does that give them the go-ahead to? Repeating it demonstrates to them that their activities have no actual consequences. For those who betrayal of others is frequently not motivated by, they are motivated by remorse or guilt. Chance. If they perceive that the door remains unresolved, that the previous removed without being held accountable, they will see no justification for acting differently, more than they previously did, and this is the genuinely unpleasant aspect of humans at times. The people we least trust are those who betray us. Anticipate a friend you thought of as family, a relative you had complete faith in, spouse you thought would support you forever after the betrayal originates. It doesn't simply affect people closest to you. Hurt alters you and makes you tremble. Comprehension of the meaning of secure, appreciated and loved. And if you are careless, it may sow the seeds of you're unsure of yourself regarding your assessment of your ability to completely trust once more, which is why it is vitally important that you do not go back to the locations you trust was destroyed when someone deceived. They have already decided on you. Rewriting is not your responsibility. Their choice to act as though it never occurred or to offer them another opportunity. If you want to do it again, you must yourself to your honor, your future and self-respect can be. This is hard for the human mind to accept. Seeks resolution. We hope that there are things that humans can fix. alteration that can heal old wounds by going back to their initial location, caused, however, not all injuries call for closure by means of some wounds need to be healed. Some people need space, while others need it, need the fortitude to leave and never go back. Because the reality is that when you walk into someone's house who has betrayed you, you're not simply entering a real location where you are, entering a psychological, the battlefield, where your previous suffering is, their previous behavior, and your self-doubt. Everybody collide, and if you are in that situation, if you're careless, you could discover minimizing and rationalizing excuses what transpired, persuading yourself that perhaps it wasn't as horrible as you recall. However, it was just as awful as you. Keep in mind, and if you let yourself keep in mind, that if you permit nostalgia or forgiveness gone wrong to bring you back, you run the danger of reopening into that atmosphere. Injuries that ought to have been left alone. Re-examining is not where true strength lies. It's in the past to know which doorways should stay closed in the event that someone has betrayed you after you owed yourself compensation. Never to allow them the opportunity to do so. Once more, some individuals reside in a condition of constant suffering regardless of the circumstances. Regardless of how much time goes by, they continue to be caught in a negative loop. Bitterness and a lack of hope in their life are a number of grievances, that endless list of complaints against the world versus destiny versus those in their immediate vicinity, and if you are not, be cautious that their suffering could become yours. Some people choose not to look for solutions, look for confirmation of they are in pain and unwilling to move forward, because oddly enough, they take solace in their identity has become one of despair and pain, and they done it as a mark of respect. They assert that they hold on to their shortcomings, disappointments as well as their bad luck, stating to themselves and everybody else who will pay attention to how unfair life has been to them. However, the reality is that life has not been fair to everyone, is different in the way they decide to react as you enter the residence of a person who feeds off of suffering. You're about to enter a setting where the predominant force in the air is negative, is filled with angry complaints, with an ingrained conviction that things will never improve, and regardless of whether you realize it or not, this has a significant impact on you as a person, is profoundly impacted by their environment. If you spend enough time there centered on negativity, it starts to form your feelings, your ideas, and even how you view your own life. You may enter with a sense of motivation and hope, plenty of future ambitions, but after spending an hour with them, you go, feeling exhausted, disheartened, and filled with, these folks probably don't celebrate your accomplishments, and they might even harbor resentment. Your progress serves as a reminder to them of their possessions, and what they lack decline to follow up, so they reply by attempting to undermine you, not always in evident methods, but through subtle, damaging remarks they could make to you that your aspirations are not realistic. The world is too cruel that regardless of, no matter what you do, things won't work out. Present it as experience and knowledge, protecting you, but in practice they are merely expressing their personal anxieties upon you, and if you pay attention and allow their remarks become ingrained in your thoughts, might find yourself second-guessing, speculating about your goals, and asking whether it's worthwhile to attempt. Misery is like a virus. It spreads easily, contaminating your ideas, your vitality, your feeling of direction, and the worst aspect is difficult to identify when it's occurring. The change is slow, and you begin by listening, showing empathy, and providing guidance. But as time passes, you discover, taking in their beliefs and uncertainties turn into your doubts, their cynicism seeping through, entering your thoughts without you being aware of it. You start reflecting their pessimism, observing issues rather than potential fixes, barriers rather than chances. This is the reason you need to be brutal in defending yourself against these settings, regardless of your level of concern about someone, regardless of how much history they have. You can't afford to let them share. Your attitude is not dictated by misery. It's your duty to get them to pull them from the pit that they have decided to stay in. You can provide assistance, you can motivate them, but if they decline to change, you have to be prepared to leave. The harsh reality is that some individuals do refuse to be rescued. They are more at ease griping than making changes, and they will drag you, if you let them to, into their suffering, not intentionally, but because they can't stand being by themselves in their pain. They require companionship, and if you're not careful, you'll turn into, indeed, your attitude is everything. Your perspective on the world influences your behaviors, choices, and future. If you let yourself be encircled by people's pessimism and despair, you will be among those who only whine. Gradually turn into one of their guardians. Keep your mind safe, because the price of letting their suffering enter your life is more bigger than you think. As we age, we will unavoidably change, meet situations that mold us, create fresh viewpoints, and foster attributes that weren't previously present. Growth is more than just achievement. It's about becoming a better person, someone more knowledgeable, someone more self-awareness. Yet there are obstacles when those in our immediate vicinity who have familiar with us from our prior decline to recognize this change. They keep seeing us through the prism of who we were before, not who we are now. The truth is unsettling, but an essential one. There will be individuals in someone in your life who just can't see your growth to which they are so used. Individual you were, or perhaps the individual who was insecure, lost, or having difficulties that they cannot reconcile your current self with their long-held perception of you. This isn't always malevolent. It's merely the outcome of their devotion to their unwillingness to acknowledge the past, that not only is change unavoidable, but this type of dynamic can be vital, extremely oppressive in your presence. These individuals you begin to feel as if because you're constantly being reduced to your prior errors, shortcomings, and they don't celebrate your failures, advancement of your accomplishments or your growth, rather than continuing to bring up who. At one point, you were pointing out your previous practices or mistakes you've made in the past, imprisoned in a self-image that no exists longer, and the longer you stay, the more difficult it is in this setting, turns into a way to escape the peril of this. Additionally, it compromises your self-esteem, yet it keeps you trapped in. Our identity can change based on old patterns. Indeed, but individuals also shape it, surrounding us while we're encircled by people who don't notice our progress. It gets harder and harder to have faith in our own metamorphosis. Start to wonder if we've actually altered or whether we're only playing tricks ourselves, as well as how long we stay in surroundings that hinder us, such as the greater the likelihood that we will revert to the self-image we've presented outgrown. These are the times when the ability to leave becomes so crucial. If someone declines to recognize who you have become, if they never let you change who you are, where it goes beyond their simply being, "I can't see how much you've grown," their disregard for your journey, it's because they don't value the work. You've worked to improve yourself, your best self, and this isn't only a manifestation of their lack of knowledge or of perception, as well as an indication of their refusal to relinquish their own expectations of you, but they're not granting you the liberty to be the individual you've put a lot of effort into. In situations where we are surrounded by, for these individuals, it's essential to recognize that it's not our responsibility to. You can't persuade them of our progress. Make someone alter their perspective of you, particularly if they are profoundly committed to viewing you as a former self of yourself. It's not necessary to demonstrate you're for them. It's about respecting your personal development and realizing that certain individuals will just not be able to recognize that protecting is crucial in this situation, your personal identity, as well as to be in the company of people who respect the person you've grown into, not who you formerly were. It's about looking for those who will support your growth, who acknowledges your advancements created, and who motivates you to keep going. These are the individuals who will evolve, acknowledge you for who you are, rather than who you were. They will assist you in continuing to move forward, rather than dragging you back to where, in the end, you've already been growing. A personal journey that involves letting go, old wounds, facing old layers, and assuming a new identity for oneself. However, if you consistently put yourself in situations where individuals are stranded, you run the risk of losing sight of your own development, which is risky. Sometimes the only way to show respect is to your change is to become more distant yourself from people who don't want to acknowledge it, since you are deserving of recognized for who you really are, rather than for who you were, the most deadly kind once. Someone you should reintegrate into your life is the person who dislikes your development. This someone might have been near you at one thing, but as you started to change and enhance, something inside of them started to shift, rather than assisting with your change, rather than a celebration. Your accomplishments made them jealous, bitter, and occasionally downright antagonistic. This animosity isn't always apparent. It's not always communicated in an open, overt envy, or criticism are frequently considerably more covert, a covert undermining of your progress, a secret apprehension, or a backhanded remark that conceals their displeasure with your accomplishments as the cause. Is that why this is so risky? Resentment can lead to a poisonous setting for you. They can act as though celebrate your accomplishments with a smile and express their pride in you. However, their statements frequently don't align with their genuine emotions that lie underneath the surface. They're subtly doubting your value, your skills, or your entitlement to success. This is problematic because it doesn't only have an exterior impact on you. The resentment can infiltrate your own thoughts. Planting doubt and insecurity seeds in you could begin to question whether your progress is well earned, if you actually possess what it needs, or whether you're deceiving, fooling yourself into believing that you are changing for the better. This type of individual is harmful because to their emotions of inadequate, their worry about abandonment behind, and their resistance to acknowledging their personal inertia can all be shown on you. It's a type of under the appearance of concern. They will minimize and make light of your accomplishments, of your goals, and consider your choices, nor because they possess any a good reason to, but because of. When you triumph, they have to face their personal shortcomings, anxieties, and their own reluctance to proceed. And even worse, they might not even acknowledge that they are doing it knowingly. Their animosity stems from their personal internal conflicts, but the effect on, if you're not careful, you're extremely real. Their bad energy can start to impair your judgment. You might begin to question if your success is truly a cause for pride, or if in some ways it is offensive to their experiencing this type of emotions. Because manipulation can be so subtle, difficult to determine when it begins to initially take hold, it could appear that they're giving well-intentioned counsel, but with time, you come to see that the guidance is always grounded in prudence, skepticism, and worry that they'll say you're being overly ambitious with your goals too high, making the world too cruel, or because you ought to feel content with what you're having rather than aiming for more. What makes this more dangerous is that it goes after your feeling of. They make you feel bad about your self-worth, because achieving the goal of wanting more in order to dream. The main takeaway from their message is that, in some ways, you're incorrect for wanting to develop oneself in order to transcend the restrictions they have set for themselves. This causes uncertainty and hesitancy, particularly if you possess a powerful. Having an emotional bond with them, you might consider if it's worthwhile to continue. To work towards your objectives, if it will create friction or disagreement with someone, you care, but in reality, you cannot allow animosity from others to control your way. You can't let their anxieties, either their fears or their refusal to mature and become your own, your accomplishments, your development, and they don't have to accept progress or verify that they are for your celebration. In order for you to feel proud of and to build upon, you need to safeguard your own tranquilly by understanding the subtle ways in which whereby those who oppose your development can undercut you. These people won't assist you in moving forward by weighing you with their uncertainties and negative thoughts, trying to pull you back into an attitude of inertia. You are not required to bear their burdens, or should the most powerful thing be you. One thing you may do is put some distance between those who are unable to acknowledge your progress. Safeguard your self-esteem and your fantasies. Those who truly care about you won't feel intimidated by your progress. They will encourage and boost you and celebrate your accomplishments, and those are the ones you should keep close. Anyone who objects to your development is just keeping you back, whether they are aware of it or not. For your personal health, for your own future, makes things challenging, yet essential choice to distance oneself from people who attempt to bring you down are not. It's about you and life, not about them. You're working to construct